presidents, 2 million students, 40 years. The Job Corps program has been making history since 1964.
This administration declares unconditional war on poverty in America.
We'll take an exciting look inside Job Corps.
It is a life-saving program.
From its beginnings,
It's almost like being in the military.
its launch,
This is Jackie Gleason talking to you about the Job Corps.
its firsts,
I was there when the first group of young men arrived.
its successes,
There's hope for any kid.
and its setbacks.
It could have been defunded, it could have been eliminated.
From the Civil Rights Revolution to the Technological Revolution, from a ravaged economy to a growing one. Through the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and today, it's the story of people fighting adversity and making their lives better.
Place to find yourself.
He pretty much taught me what I was capable of doing.
With rare footage and memories from the people who started it,
I'm really happy because everything came out so well.
the people who lived it,
Made me realize what I'm actually worth.
and the people who keep it going. The remarkable story of 40 years of Job Corps.
It needs to go 140 more years.
It's the good life for every American youngster.
Job Corps' 40th anniversary special, a celebration of success.
The United States today represents an achievement in good government unsurpassed in the history of man.
By all outward appearances, America in the 1950s seemed to be a time of great prosperity and hope.
The common thinking was that poverty was not an American problem anymore. The Depression was a thing of ancient history.
But there was another America, a vast world of unemployed, undernourished, and uneducated.
People were being left out, not only the ones that were in ghettos in Harlem and Cleveland and so on, but also the Appalachian hollows in farm communities where kids had not learned to read and write.
Between the exploitation of coal workers in Appalachia, migrant workers in the South and West, and the influx of the unskilled poor pouring into the cities of the Northeast, more than 40 million Americans were living in abject poverty.
A sharecropper don't really make much money, and I knew I did not want to become a farmer because those days were long, hard, and endless.
But soon, even sharecropping and coal mining wouldn't be options for this untrained segment of society. Automation was stealing their jobs and their hope.
And when you're growing up as a delinquent in the hard hit part of say a place like Houston, Texas, the last thing on the plate is hope.
And this administration today, here and now, declares unconditional war on poverty in America.
The war on poverty. It would be the most ambitious social government project since Roosevelt's New Deal. A sweeping series of bills that would create, among many programs, Head Start, VISTA, and Job Corps.
This was the cornerstone of the Great Society. It was the beginning of so many other things that were good to happen.
I had the task of trying to create programs that would be helpful to the people who were poor or unemployed.
Job Corps was a revolutionary new concept, taking young people between the ages of 16 and 21 and putting them in a nurturing environment where all their basic needs would be met and they would be taught a trade. It was, above all, a chance. A huge public relations blitz was organized to make people aware of the program, and the stars of the day did public service announcements.
Hello, this is Jackie Gleason talking to you about the Job Corps.
This is Dick Van Dyke here to tell you about an army America is using in its all-out war against poverty.
This is Andy Griffith. Do you want to break away from sleepy little towns like Mayberry for a year?
Hi, I'm Andy Williams.
I'm Dinah Shore.
This is Harry Belafonte.
This is Richard Crenna.
Send a postcard to Job Corps, Washington, D.C. Be sure and send your name and address and age.
These are some of the first Job Corps volunteers.
The logistics of creating Job Corps were staggering. The plan called for 100 youth centers throughout the U.S., rural conservation centers in the nation's woods and farmlands, and residential job training facilities in the urban areas.
You had no model to go on. You had the Job Corps teachers and the administrators showing up never having taught at or administered a Job Corps center. So there were some chaotic things going on in the early years.
They keep coming all day, by plane and by bus.
Before the centers were even completed, students were signing up in droves. Centers were created, teachers were hired, and policies were drafted. Military bases would be used. The original centers were based on a military model. Uniforms would be worn and curfews and inspections would be part of a regular schedule. Many of the supplies would be military surplus, and the program, like the military of its day, was men only.
It's almost like being in the military back then.
One time it was just a plain barracks. You can look from one end of the hall and see 80 bodies in beds.
There was no running water inside the barracks.
As in any army, there are the basic necessities and routine matters to be taken care of.
I had a nice bed, a nice warm place to live.
I had my first new coat.
3 meals per day. I never had 3 meals in my whole life.
There was something striking about the unprecedented diversity at the Job Corps camps. While outside centers, riots were about to erupt all over the U.S. Other than a few isolated incidents, inside the centers, students were living in relative harmony.
When I got here, all the fellows was nice. We never had no arguments, no fights, you know. Everybody gets along all right.
The next step for the students was making sure they had a proper education.
When I showed up at Job Corps, I couldn't read or write. And I spent the first 6 months just in education. What?
Only after basic needs and education were taken care of did the final piece of the Job Corps puzzle come into play, finding the students a trade. Conservation centers focused on construction, forestry work, and even firefighting. In the urban centers, typing, technology, and office work were emphasized. But all students got mentors, instructors they could look up to. That kind of care would be something every generation of Job Corps would remember.
Job Corps is a place to grow up, a place to find yourself.
He pretty much taught me what I was capable of doing.
It's where my feet hit solid ground and where I was able to leap from.
Made me a better person to realize what I'm actually worth.
I feel great.
People really do care, even the president, and he was willing.
While Job Corps was working and had brought young men together from all around the country, there was one group clearly missing: young women, a fact that wasn't lost on the students.
Just down the mountain from Catoctin, there's been some competition for local girls.
There were no women, much to our chagrin.
It would take the perseverance of Oregon Representative Edith Green to convince the Office of Economic Opportunity to add Job Corps centers for women.
There's a Job Corps for girls, too. Or I should say, for young women.
While the men were learning heavy machinery, printing, accounting, and every other possible profession, the women's curriculum was very different.
There are many courses to choose from, including what you must know to get a job in a dress shop or department store.
The Corps women began benefiting right away from a solid education, a safe nurturing place to stay, and the encouragement that had become Job Corps' trademark. Soon things would change. The Vietnam War was raging, and budget cuts were looming.
The complexion of the late 1960s versus the early 1960s is radically different, and that had an impact on the war on poverty, obviously, and on the Job Corps.
1968 would prove devastating. By June, both Martin Luther King Jr. and Bobby Kennedy would be assassinated. The world was changing quickly, and the future of Job Corps was threatened. Centers were closed. The very future of the program was in danger of extinction.
This is the only chance a lot of us have to make anything out of our life is going to the Job Corps Center here in Lincoln.
Many students and faculty of Job Corps had just hit stride. For some of the students, it was the only home they'd ever known, their only shot at a future now in danger.
This is your home. We want you here, and we're going to fight to keep it open.
It was only about to get worse. The next year, congressional hearings would be held to decide whether or not to get rid of Job Corps altogether. The very fate of the program hung in the balance.
It could have been defunded, it could have been eliminated.
I testified before Congress. I said, sir, if you close this program down, you and I both will regret it in our years to come.
If the program go away for some young people, they would probably end up in jail.
So promise me one thing. We'll keep cool, we'll keep the faith, and together we'll make it. Thank you.
Despite the closing of more than half of the centers, Job Corps survived, and when the smoke cleared on the turbulent 60s, Job Corps was still standing tall. Times were changing fast in the early 70s. Job Corps had made a dent in poverty in the 60s, and now it had to adapt to rapidly changing times. One of the most significant changes was the introduction of co-ed centers.
I was there when the first group of young men arrived, and the women were like lining the path that the bus came on center. They were so excited, and there was just like incredible excitement and wonderful positive energy.
The military stodginess of the 60s was going away. Gone were the military uniforms, the segregation of men and women, and the early growing pains. By 1974, Job Corps was 10 years old and already a survivor.
As the Job Corps got along in experience, they kept learning and learning and learning how to do it better.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
The 70s came with their own share of drama and cultural transition. In 1974, the country slipped into its worst recession in 40 years. Fortunately, at the same time, Job Corps was growing, shifting more centers closer to cities, and boasting that 78% of its graduates were getting jobs. Gender roles were further breaking down. By the end of the decade, nearly all the centers had gone co-ed, and as a result, trades were crossing gender lines as well.
Today, nursing is a big trade both for men and women. Unheard of back in 1968.
We have women who work in our heavy equipment operators program now.
There was another revolution on the horizon that Job Corps would have to keep pace with. This one not cultural nor geographical, but technological.
Computers were almost non-existent in the time that I was in Job Corps. I mean, they were just barely into electronic typewriters back then.
Lots of fellas, and girls too, are learning the computer skills.
People in disadvantaged environments, people don't have the access to computers.
We've added computer-based training to keep pace with the labor market. That's probably the most significant change.
Under the Carter administration, the program would expand by 14,000 positions, and the budget would climb from $175 to $560 million. By the end of the decade, Job Corps was at an all-time high, 15 years into its history.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
Job Corps headed into the 80s with a whole new set of challenges, growing inner-city violence and an epidemic of drug use. In response, Job Corps introduced alcohol and drug abuse treatment programs in 1982.
Job Corps, just as it was doing in the 1960s, is removing them from that damaging, toxic environment and placing them in a healthy, constructive environment.
For many, excessive consumption had become the cultural mandate of the 80s, but it was also the era of fiscal conservatism. Job Corps almost ended up on the chopping block for the second time. At one point, it was even written out of the 1986 budget.
There's no bigger crisis than being zeroed out of the budget.
To save Job Corps, a report was commissioned to quantify the program's success.
All of us who were involved with the program at the time we're basically holding our breath that the results would demonstrate what we always knew, and that's that the return on investment was positive.
The report determined that $1.46 was returned to society for every dollar invested in Job Corps. After seeing the positive results, Congress continued Job Corps' funding. Accountability, it would be the key to Job Corps' survival in a rapidly changing world. By 1986, there were 105 centers and more than 20 years of accomplished graduates. George Herner had been decorated in Vietnam and was now building a family. There was Vera Ford, who gave up a lucrative nursing career to work for the National Job Corps Alumni Association.
It's something about Job Corps, and if you love it, you can try to get out of it, but you can't get away from it. It pulls you back.
There was Sergio Gutierrez, working his way through law school toward becoming a judge, and Job Corps' most famous graduate, George Foreman, former heavyweight champion of the world.
If I lived another lifetime, it wouldn't be enough to pay back the help I received by way of the Job Corps.
5 administrations, more than 100 centers, more than 1 million students. In 1989, Job Corps celebrated what was once thought impossible, its 25th anniversary.
25 was a celebration because we had survived the challenge.
Job Corps entered the 90s and its second quarter century with strong support from the White House and Congress.
I, George Herbert Walker Bush,
with the encouragement of First Lady Barbara Bush, the largest push for Job Corps expansion since the Carter administration would be undertaken.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
While the first Gulf War waged in the Middle East, the war on poverty at home was opening new fronts. It was a new initiative called the 50-50 Plan. The proposal was an historic milestone, designed to help 1 in 4 eligible youths.
Imagine what this program can do if it was able to touch more people.
The 50-50 Plan was also revolutionary in that the measure was embraced by both aisles of the House and Senate.
Job Corps does help reduce the deficit.
They build on the success record of the Job Corps after all these years.
It's a program that deserves our support.
I support the 50-50 Plan because Job Corps is the way to the future.
While Job Corps would spend the 80s keeping up with the technological revolution, much of the 90s would be spent adapting to social changes. In an effort to keep parents enrolled in the program, daycare would become a regular fixture on Job Corps' campuses.
It represented an opportunity to take advantage of Job Corps, which they didn't previously have.
In an effort to keep the centers sober and safe, a program of zero tolerance was introduced. Any student found engaging in drug use or violence would be expelled from the program.
It sets very clear levels of expectation. What behaviors are acceptable and allowable on Job Corps centers?
And SST, Social Skills Training, was introduced, a program to not only help kids get jobs, but to keep them by learning what it takes to exist day to day in the workplace. But step foot in any SST session on any Job Corps campus, and you'll see students learning more than job skills. They're learning life skills.
Happiness is not found at the end of the path. Happiness is found along the path.
You know, he gives it to you straight up, and I couldn't love anyone better than that.
That commitment to helping comes full circle generation after generation. In 1993, Sergio Gutierrez became the first Latino judge named to the Idaho District Court. He felt it his duty to go back to tell present-day students what the encouragement he received at Job Corps had meant to him.
Job Corps then begins to, in your mind, change whatever negative views you might have about yourself to see the good in you, the positive in you.
There's something, I think, magical about knowing that you have been in Job Corps and that you have succeeded in Job Corps.
I, William Jefferson Clinton, do solemnly swear.
The 90s continued, and so did Job Corps, celebrating 30 years by adapting to the world around it, teaching new trades, and keeping up with the changing economy. The program had come a long way from its early days of only basic trades. Job Corps centers were now offering more than 100 trades at more than 100 centers, everything from computer networking to seamanship. America celebrated the new millennium, the nation had a new president, and Job Corps had a new direction.
It required a realignment of how we go about training.
Called CDSS, Career Development Services System, it would entail an individual results-oriented approach, a light year away from the original institutional approach of the early Job Corps years.
I think that's the reason why Job Corps has survived for 40 years, is that it continues to try to keep pace with time. As circumstances change, so does the program.
And now Job Corps has a new director steering the program toward the half-century mark.
Well, I think the future of Job Corps is very bright. We have tremendous support from Secretary of Labor, the United States Congress, governors and mayors, And it's because of the good job that we do.
Let this session of Congress be known as the session which declared all-out war on human poverty and unemployment in these United States.
40 years ago, a group set about on a bold experiment, determined to help the poor improve their own lives.
I'm really happy because everything came out so well.
Job Corps continues to work. Each year, nearly 70,000 students enter the program, gaining a genuine shot at dignity, self-respect, and a future. Thanks to Congress, business partnerships, dedicated instructors, and the American people, Job Corps is better today than it was yesterday. And with continued support, it will be even better tomorrow than it is today. For 40 years, time and time again, Job Corps proves success lasts a lifetime.